This A-level Buddhism Anthology Basham section 11 video. What's the image in the background? Well, there we have the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance. These are the things that hinder us, that draw us back. We'll think about shortly. Let's read section 11 and then we can just get on with it. So, assuredly, I must bear the burden of all beings, for I have resolved to save them all. I must set them all free. I must save the whole world from the forest of birth, old age, disease, and rebirth, from the misfortune of sin, from the round of birth and death, from the toils of heresy. For all beings are caught in the net of craving, encompassed by ignorance, held by the desire for existence. They are doomed to destruction. Shut in a cage of pain, they are ignorant, untrustworthy, full of doubts, always at loggerheads, one with another, always prone to see evil. They cannot find refuge in the ocean of existence. They are on the edge of the gulf of destruction. I work to establish the kingdom of perfect wisdom. Of all beings, I care not for my own deliverance. I must save all beings from the torrent of rebirth with the raft of my omniscient mind. I must pull them back from the great precipice. I must free them from all misfortune, ferry them over the stream of rebirth. Right, well, now we're getting into the thick of it. This is dense language. This is the development of the Bodhisattva vow. So let's pick it off here. Is burden bearing, and we find this sentence here, surely I must bear the burden of all beings. Is burden bearing another parallelism? So yes, the Bodhisattva vow is becoming verbose as it has in Basham's language evolved. The burden bearing could strike you again, as Basham wants us to consider, as resembling Jesus' statement in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are heavy laden." So yes, it might be. It might not be. It might just be a coincidence that people carry burdens and it's a common human metaphor. Probably. I'll let you decide which is the more likely. So what in this vow in this 3rd, 4th century? What is there in this 3rd, 4th century text? What are the continuities with previous texts going all the way back to the 1st century BC or the 1st century AD? Let's take a look here. So we have the Bodhisattva vow. For I have resolved to save them all. And we have this language of forest. I must set them all free. I must save the whole world from the forest. Remember the forest analogy first crops up in the 8,000 verses and it hangs around because there were a lot of forests. Forests were dangerous places where bad things happened. They were dismal places. Remember the analogies of the true hero is not the one who abandons his family but leads it out of the forest. And what's the forest an analogy to? Of course, Samsara. We get further birth, old age, and disease. Is this? I wondered, is this a reference to the hagiographies of the Buddha? By 200 AD, we find the emergence of these, the 6 acts or the 10 acts of the Buddha, as a story of the life of the Buddha. 700 years late, but still not a gospel, not a biography, but a hagiography. You know, we find these stylized accounts. Is this more about Buddhist confession, you know, the 4 sights, birth, old age, sickness, disease, and death, and rebirth, than it is about anything else? Especially this phrase rebirth. Let's just pick on that. A reference, what is rebirth? It's not reincarnation, and yet it captures the idea something similar, if not importantly different. Remember, there's no soul. The Atman is denied by the Buddha in favor of Anatta. The third of the Lakshanas, the universal truth. And this is a reference to the Hindu general belief in the horrors of samsara, certainly. As Armstrong says, it's birth, death, and re-death. Not rebirth, but re-death is the better way. It's a horror. Faced old people in the Far East this was the common problem, and the Buddha was the guy to figure it out. So there is lots of continuity, or at least seeming continuity. What about continuity in terms of the polemical kind of language and discourse in this text? So we read on: the round of birth and death, the toils of heresy. The toils of heresy, this phrase here, the toils of heresy. Well, there were plenty of things that Mahayana denied. It found as heresies. It could be a reference to Hindu thinking or Jain thinking, or the Buddha himself anathemized. He rejected, and he canonized other things he accepted from the Shramana movement, a range of things. And so this is still happening. What's perhaps principally in mind, though, is Theravada. They're the false teachers. They're the ones stuck with the toils of heresy. All their many acts of meditation, vipassana, and so on is a toil of heresy. What a great way to describe your fellow Buddhist involved in toils of heresy. The Hinayana, the small way. Well, Mahayana, it's interesting. It is self-defined by a negation, a rejection. It defines itself by what it's not. It's not the Arahat path to Nibbana. It's not renunciation. We have mentioned here a net. What is this net? For all beings are caught in the net of craving. All beings are caught in the net of craving. Well, this net, Indra's net as it's called, is a Hindu story, reference, analogy that's used by Buddhists. Unsurprisingly, Buddhism was in the minority to convert Hindus, to appeal to Hindus. The Buddha was clever himself. He used Hindu language. This was a common metaphor, but it was used for Buddhist purposes. Now, in Mahayana, it came to refer to the idea of emptiness. The net is inherently empty, isn't it? But it's not without existence. Well, that's Nagarjuna's way of emptiness. And it draws from this idea of dependent origination, pratya, samaya, nutapata, and later how this will develop in Buddha nature school, in Huyan's Chinese Buddha nature school, into the idea of interpenetration in Buddhist, and then later in Zen, into the idea of interconnectedness. All of this logically flows out of this net, this interconnection of all things. From the doctrine of sunyata, we get to the idea of interconnectedness, as people like Thich Nhat Hanh argue. So we have here a phrase, craving. Craving, let me just highlight it in a different color. Ignorance held by the desire of existence, they are doomed to destruction, shut in a cage of pain. So we got craving. The word here, desire, could also be interpreted craving, tanha. And we have here actually a reference to the analysis of the early Buddhism of the types of desire, craving. And normally this is seen as wrong. So desire for existence is a deep kind of tanha. There's just tanha for kama tanha, which is tanha, just desire for sensual stuff. Then there's bhavana tanha, which is the cultivation, the desire to be great, to be amazing. Encompassed by ignorance, held by the desire for. So how does ignorance, how do the three poisons relate to each other? Greed, hatred, and ignorance. Well, ignorance is held by the desire for existence, and the result is doomed to destruction. So this word is a very old word, tanha. It goes back to the Vedic society and before, which means desire and wish, and so on. A key belief key belief that's developed here is this reference to thirst, desire, longing, greed. It's a sort of physical tanha, or desire, or craving. And what we have here is one of the three types of tanha: kama tanha, craving for sensual pleasures. This is bhavana tanha. That would be the term that's used here, craving for existence. What's not referenced here is vibhavana tanha, craving for non-existence, was the third type that came to be elucidated. But the result is destruction. Dukkha is mentioned here, destruction, suffering. But some people are worthy and some people are untrustworthy. Who are the untrustworthy? Well, they're the ones who are ignorant. They're the ones who are toiling in nets of heresy, ignorant. The ones who are shut in a cage of pain, or dukkha. Who is that? Well, this is another ad hominem attack on the person. Don't attack the argument, attack the person. Of Theravada. This is more polemical language in here. Unlike the Hinayana, they have found the true refuge. The Hinayana think they found the true refuge. They crossed the river of Samsara, but in fact, they're still swept into the ocean, into the sea. What do we mean by that? Into the ocean, into the sea. They still cannot find a refuge in the ocean of existence. I think they've crossed the river. They're still in the ocean of ocean of existence. They're in the samsara, in the sea. So mentioned several times here is ignorance. It's the first link in the 12 marks of dependent origination. We have ignorance here. There's a second time, if I remember, ignorance is mentioned. Ignorance here. It's ignorance, one of the three poisons or unwholesome roots or kelsas of moha. And moha is the idea of delusion or confusion. Theravada are confused, they're deluded. Raga, greed, sensual attachment. Devesa means aversion or ill will, hatred. So these character flaws, these are innate problems that we're perhaps born with or have developed, are seen as the root of craving. And if we have these desires, they will lead inevitably to dukkha and to rebirth. And there is the cycle of destruction, the cycle of that's depicted in the Tibetan Thankra, held in place by the great demon. The edge of the gulf. They're all on the edge of the gulf of destruction. They're going to go round and round and round and round until they every life miserable, until they realize their delusion. Those Theravada. That's it, Theravada. There are opposites to these. So what was the Mahayana hoping to develop? Well, non-delusion, and that would be non-delusion over the dualistic nature of samsara and nibbana, all kinds of dualisms, especially the Yogacara people who this text is from would want to argue. Aloba, non-attachment or generosity. Remember, that's the first of the 6 perfections. And adavesa, or non-hatred, or remember, it's metta, loving kindness. Again, very typical of the Bodhisattva perception of compassion and wisdom as the essential for liberation. But we're not finished there with this section. It's a very rich, full section. The mention of the ocean is a very important thing just to mention here. See if I can get it in a different color here. The ocean of existence is mentioned a couple of times here. Ferry them over water and ocean is mentioned at least a couple of times here. And it comes from a specific term, bhavna sagara. It means, and the Pali texts are full of water metaphors, ocean metaphors and similes. It's no surprise, perhaps, that such metaphors and similes find their way to later Buddhism after this text in Tibet, China, and Japan. Huyan of the Buddha Nature School, in his book, his sutra, he says, sentient beings bob and sink in the ocean of existence. Their troubles are boundless. They have no place to rest. Again, Basham, remember, he's thinking about the evolution of language, maybe this is from language about a stream to a language about an ocean. It always goes in one direction, it's language. Same water, ocean, stream analogy pops up in an important Buddhist Pali canon text, the Udana. And the image there is it's very similar. It's of those who understand they are not like sailors. They're not on the ocean, Samsara, who have crossed the ocean and returned to dry land, but instead they're like great sea monsters who sport and play in the ocean without any shore, going hither and thither. They are those that have given up being landlubbers, realize perhaps that we are all in the ocean, because all is ocean. Samsara and Nibbana are the same thing. So we move on. We have this reference to the kingdom. The kingdom, let me find a different color here. I'll go with that. To establish the kingdom of perfect wisdom for all beings. Kingdoms here, we have our eschatological, they're goal orientated. A kingdom is what you want to build. While it's focused on the present and in actualizing, it's about actualizing a future reality. And what is it the Mahayana wants to actualize? That Samsara and Nibbana are, in Sponberg, the scholar Sponberg's terminology, coterminous. And that any thoughts of gaining Nibbana, that the Theravada in their toils of heresy think there is wrong. It's wrong-headed, and Mahayana doctrine denies it. In this last section, just count the number of times you see the letter I. It's there loads. I work to establish. I care not for all my. I must save all beings from the torrent. I must put them back from the great precipice. I must free them from all misfortune, ferry them over the stream of rebirth. Lots of I's there, and it's just as I orientated in a sense, but the I is focused on helping others to help yourself. Theravada have been swept into the ocean, but of samsara. But Mahayana say, I am the ferryman. Here's this phrase: I will ferry them. Pay the ferryman. I can do the job. The Mahayana, I've got the perfected wisdom that Theravada haven't. It's my sacrificial work, my will, that will aid all beings in salvation, because I can trust in my omniscient mind. Honest, trust me, Gov, he says. We have this mention of a raft. Well, that's an important term here, the raft. I will ferry them over the stream, there's a kind of idea of a raft. What do you ferry them over with? Well, you ferry them over with a raft. The raft is normally a reference to doctrines, but it's not the Theravada raft, it's the Mahayana raft. That's built on an omniscient mind. Now, the Buddha Theravada believers argue he was perfectly enlightened. The moment he became enlightened, he had perfect knowledge. And detractors of Buddhism, critics, polemical critics of Buddhism in general, interlocutors would say, well, hang on, weren't there times when the Buddha was ignorant? He didn't know stuff. Well, how can he be perfectly enlightened if he doesn't know stuff? Well, Theravada claim he did know everything perfectly, and they claim that arahats also know things perfectly. Mahayana, however, disagree. They would say the only people who perfectly know stuff, who have perfect wisdom, is the Bodhisattva, who has achieved all of the levels of being a Bodhisattva. Now, we all can have perfect wisdom, we just need to realize it. And this idea of omniscient mind, well, that gets highly developed in the thinking of Yogacara. Obviously, this is written by Yogacara, and then in turn in Tibet, with the idea of primordial mind, and on into Zen in Japan with the idea of original enlightenment. So you might want to do some AO2. What is the strength of Basham's account on how the vow has developed or evolved from the 8,000 verses? He's constructing an account that there's a development of it. Is he making a good job of it? What do you think? Could you support a challenge? Is there a better way it could be done? This was section 11. Perhaps the key word from this section was samsara, this Sanskrit word that means wandering, a sort of aimless wandering, with the connotation of cyclical, circuitous change, connected with the idea of rebirth and the cyclicality of all life, matter, and existence, a fundamental belief in most Indian religions, not just Buddhism. It is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Section 12.